Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the early title Tuesday on chess.com being played today, July 22nd of the great year 2025. Now, yesterday, the freestyle event ended in Las Vegas. I drove back to California, and as always, we're back to playing the premier online event. Now, over my illustrious career of playing in Title Tuesday, I have won a whopping 104 of these events, and today I'm trying to make it 105. Now, rather shockingly, one of the rare occurrences that we see is that the current world chess champion, Gukesh D is actually playing in this event. He has played Title Tuesday before, but it's very rare to see him play. But Gukesh is the world champion. He's performed very well, and it's no surprise that I'm paired up with him in the 10th round of this tournament. Now, going into this critical 10th round matchup, both of us have 8 points out of 9. We both have suffered an early loss in the tournament, but we're tied for the lead, and the winner of this game most likely is going to go on and win the event. So, Gukesh has the white pieces. He starts out with knight f3. We get d5, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, and now we get to move pawn to d4. Now, Gukesh could have castled the king here, but he doesn't want to fall prey to the very famous meme, also known as the big black center. I get these pawns in the center of the board. White is still fine after a move like d3, but nonetheless, the big black center is really, really powerful. So Gukesh goes d4 to stop me from playing e5. I go knight d7, castles knight f6, c4, takes, knight a3, and now I move my knight to try and temporarily guard the juicer on c4. Gukesh sacks the horse, and now he plays queen to a4, checking the king and attacking the pony. I go c6, takes, and now we get to move bishop to e6. Gukesh plays queen c2, and here I play bishop f5, tickling the queen. We get queen b3, queen b6, and now Gukesh plays move e3. Now, it's rather surprising that at this point Gukesh spends 30 seconds on this move individually. Gukesh is one of the best prepared players in the world, and what this tells me is that Gukesh was a little bit unfamiliar with this position. So we get e3. I castle, bishop d2, and now I play the move bishop to e4. Now, what I'm doing here is creating the very classic wooden shield in honor of XQC with this bishop in the middle of the board. But more importantly, what white would love to do thematically is move this pony and try to open up the long diagonal for this op on g2. So I go bishop to e4, and now if white tries to move the bishop, you hang the knight, and if you move the knight, I can always just trade the bishops, and now you no longer have this fianchettoed bishop spying the diagonal. So here we got the move queen to a3. I play the move queen to c7, retreating the queen to guard the pawn on e7. Gukesh goes rook c1. I play rook to d8, and as soon as I play this move, I realized that this was a very slightly inaccurate move. Now, the reason I played rook d8 here is I thought with the rook on d8, I can potentially push e5 here, opening up the d file, or a move like c5, and I figure there's going to be a ton of pressure on the open d line. But after I go rook to d8, Gukesh plays this move knight to e5. I trade, and what I realized almost immediately is that there's a very nasty trap here. If I play a random move, like let's just say pawn to e6, white can go bishop to a5 here, attacking the queen and the rook on the diagonal. Queen guards the bishop. And if I play b6, white can go knight takes pawn, the rook guards the pony. And if I take the bishop after knight to e7, this is the classic fossil here. The knight checks the king, the queen guards the knight, and the rook targets the queen at the same time. I'd have to do a Botez gambit, giving up the queen, but here white has a queen for a knight and a bishop, and last time that I checked, even though I learned before Common Core math was a thing, 9 is worth more than 6. So I trade the bishops, and now I play this move bishop to f8 after a very long think. Now, this move is a typical blitz move. In a classical game, I almost certainly would not play it, but in a blitz game, I'm spending a lot of time, I'm not sure what to do, and when I play this move, I'm essentially calling Gukesh's bluff. Now, you'll notice here that I'm down 32 seconds on the clock. For players who are beginners or amateur players, don't worry about time. Time is not the end of the world, but at the top level, time plays a very critical role when you get towards the end of the game, and usually if you have a small time advantage on the clock, it is a massive advantage. So when I play bishop to f8 here, I'm basically asking Gukesh, what is he going to do? Now here Gukesh spends, I believe, 1 minute in this position before playing the move b4, and this really highlights one of the differences between players like Gukesh, who are more about pure calculation, and more intuitive players like myself or Pragnananta or people like Hans Niemann, for example, because when I play bishop to f8, Gukesh here tries to calculate the entire line after bishop to a5, b6, and now there are all these different possibilities. Now, if white goes rook takes c6 after queen b7, the bishop is hanging. There's also a threat on this diagonal as well because the rook is pinned. And if white moves the bishop to, let's say, b4 after a5, let's say bishop to e1 here, I can go knight to d7, and suddenly this tower is under severe pressure due to the pin. White, in fact, is just losing here. If white plays a move like queen c3, I can simply play the move takes, and after takes, and the move rook a c8, the rook on c6 gets pinned, and I win the game. So white has to use a lot of time here trying to figure out what you're doing. Now, the computer, of course, says that in this position, if white plays the other order with queen to b3, attacking the pawn on f7 here, if I play the move pawn takes bishop, now white can take the pawn after king h8, rook takes c6, queen b7, and king g1. Computer says that white is better here, even though white is down a bishop for a couple of central pawns, because you can go for the double stack. The queen and the knight are very close to the king. I'm not actually sure I believe that white is objectively better, but the computer thinks there are chances. Now, can you play this in a blitz game where you can't calculate everything to the end? You kind of have to make the decision. Do you trust your intuition that there's something? And if you don't see it, then you play something else. What you gonna do? Now, Gukesh spends a minute and ultimately decides to play the move b4 instead. And there's nothing wrong with this move specifically, but the problem is that because Gukesh spends 1 minute on the clock here, he's now on his back foot. He's down 30 seconds here. And my moves, as you're about to see, become a lot easier. So I play knight d7. Gukesh plays f4, I go e6, and now we get the move queen b3. Here I play the move knight back to f6, and the main reason I play this move is that Gukesh has gone for the classic stonewall setup with the pawns on d4, e3, and f4. Now, a stonewall can sometimes be very, very strong, but in this position, I'm trusting that with the stonewall and these weak squares for the knight to jump, specifically e4 and d5, I'd rather keep the knights on the board. So here we get the move queen d3, and now I go queen d6, and all my moves here I'm playing with flow. It's very easy. I want to play on the light squares here. I want to attack the king, attack the pawn, attack the pawn. Very, very easy moves. I don't have to burn time. And now Gukesh is really struggling. So we get the move king g1. I go queen to d5 here, spying the pawn on a2, and also preventing white from playing e4. We get the move rook fd1. I take the juicer here, and this move is a classic greedy move by me in the situation. Now, in a normal game, I almost certainly would not play this, but I realize here that Gukesh, he's down nearly 1 minute on the clock. I'm trying to push him around, and so I want to play very quickly. Now, this can be a very double-edged sword too, because sometimes when you go for move like queen takes a2, after Gukesh goes e4, suddenly there's a big white center, and there are a lot of ways to start pushing some p. But Gukesh is a player who likes to think, so I'm trying to use it against him. So when I take, we get e4, and now I play queen a4. Now, white here is objectively okay in the position, but it's very hard to play because the pawn on b4 is a weakness. The pawn on d4 is a weakness. The pawn on e4 is a weakness, and you are currently down a pawn on the queen side. So here Gukesh plays bishop e1. This move he plays in 5 seconds. This is just a bad move here. Gukesh should have played the move f5, opening up the scope for the bishop on the diagonal. And after takes at queen c4 here, is very, very murky what's going on. If I take with a g pawn, for example, after ef5, there's rook f1, bishop to g5, and white has a lot of play here. And I'm not actually sure if I would have been able to survive the game. But instead, Gukesh plays bishop e1. And this is a perfect example of why time is so critical at the top level. Because if Gukesh has time, he never plays this move. But he's getting pushed around on the clock. He's got to make a quick decision. And he ultimately makes the wrong one. Now, here I play the move a6. Initially, I wanted to go queen to b5. But after queen b5 takes, and the move rook c7, suddenly white gets the classic kebab on the 7th rank. You have this rook that's going to impale all the pawns here. And white is still a touch worse after knight takes e4 and knight takes f7 and rook b8. But it's just not that bad. But the great thing here is I have all the time in the world, so I spend 10 seconds and ultimately play the move a6. And the reason this move is so strong is that now what I want to do is if white plays h3 after queen b5 and takes, I no longer have to allow the kebab by taking and rook c7 being possible. Instead, I simply take with the a pawn. I keep the door shut. There's no kebab on the file, and now I'm up a pawn in the endgame, and I'm simply going to win. Now, if I have 5 seconds, I probably don't find it, but I have the time. I use it, and I play a6. Now we get the move g4 here. Gukesh trying to activate the bishop on the diagonal. He's also trying to build the Great Wall of China here with these pawns on the 4th rank pushing forward. So now I go queen b5 anyway. Gukesh goes queen f3. He's down a pawn. He needs to start pushing this wall forward and creating some play. Now I go knight to d7. We get bishop to h4, and after this move, the game is effectively over. After knight to d3, even though white is still down a pawn on the queen side, you have this Great Wall of China on the 4th rank, and white still has some chances. Instead, we got bishop to h4. Now I trade the knights, I go rook to d7, and here, even though you'll notice it's Swiss cheese, there are a lot of dark square weaknesses. With the lone bishop, white cannot create any big threats. And of course, I have this bishop on f8. I can always fianchetto it to g7. So any ideas of something like a lolly checkmate with queen h6 are never in play. So Gukesh plays the move rook to f1. I play queen takes pawn, we get d5 here, and now I simply take, and after takes, queen d4 check. Gukesh abruptly resigns here because I'm attacking the king. After bishop f2 and queen takes d5, I'm now up 3 pawns here. I've got 6 pawns versus 3 pawns, and white simply is no play. I can also just play a5, a4, start pushing my p, and I win the game. So I get this very, very big win against Gukesh after queen to d4 where he resigns, and this pushes me to a score out of 9 out of 10. Now, round number 11, I would draw Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. That would put me on 9.5 points. I would ultimately tie for first place alongside Jeffrey Zhang, but I did end up having the better tiebreak, so I get my 105th Title Tuesday win. Now, before we go, there's one other quick game we're going to go over because a lot of people find pawn checkmates to be very sexy, and there was a cool checkmate theme that occurred in one of my earlier games. So one other game that we're going to pick up is this game that I played in the 7th round against Nodar Lortkapanidze from Georgia. Now, playing against a kid is always very, very dangerous. In this game, I had 6 points out of 7, but you need to win every game. So we get e4. I play my classic modern setup with g6 and a6. We get d6 here, and now we get to move queen d2. Now, the reason I like this setup is that white doesn't have an obvious plan against it. You can play very energetically here. I put these pawns on d6 and g6. I want to go a6 and b5. And this is a variation that is usually referred to as the Tiger Modern. Now, it's called the Tiger Modern because Tiger Hilart Persson, a Swedish grandmaster, came up with the setup, wrote some books on it, and he has popularized it immensely. Prior to that, it had no name. So we get the move knight d7. Castles, I play the move b5. Now we get the move h4, h6, knight h3, bishop b7, h5, g5, and f4. Now, what's really funny about this moment is you'll notice I've got 2 minutes and 56 seconds on the clock, and I spent 21 or 22 seconds before playing this move g5. Now, as soon as I played g5, those of you guys who are watching my live stream on my Kick channel, you probably heard me say, what am I smoking? Why did I spend so much time? Now, what's hilarious about this move is that after f4, for some reason, I did not see the line that I realized after 20 seconds and occurs in the game with b4. Instead, I only saw pawn takes pawn, and after knight takes b4 and knight to e2 with the knight coming to g3 and f5, the b4 pawn being weak. This is a very, very ugly position to play. Let's say takes, knight g3, bishop h7, and bishop d3. Look at these black pieces. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces on their original squares. The bishop and the knight are only on the second rank. So even though I have an extra pawn, there's an open f file, open e file, and these knights are super, super active here, and black's in a world of hurt. But luckily, after 20 seconds, my brain started working, and I don't know what I was smoking at the time, and I realized I could go b4. Take, and go b4. Oh, I apparently messed up my recap because I thought I played the other order. Hilarious, you guys. Hilarious. I thought actually that I could, I thought I played b4 in the game, but goes to show that when you do this, sometimes you mess up your lines. We're doing this on the fly, so let's roll with it. So as I was saying, knight c2 would have been good, but instead we get knight to d5, and maybe I am smoking something now to make the classic joke. So I play e6. We get knight takes pawn. I go a5 here, knight d3, and now I take the pawn on e4. So after bishop takes e4, we get this move bishop to e2, and now I play the move knight to f6. After knight to f6, we got the move bishop to f3, and now I play the move knight to b6. After knight to b6 in this position, I'm trying to maneuver my knights here and finish my development. I'm also not too worried because my king has flexibility. I can castle to the king side or the queen side. So now we get the move queen to e2. I play the move queen d7 here, trying to activate the queen to c6, b5, or a4 in this position using the diagonal. And now we get the move bishop to f2. I trade the bishops, and now I play the move knight d5. We get rook g1, bishop f6, takes, king b1, and now I play the move queen b5. Now at this point, I'm setting up a very devious threat here. If white plays a move like bishop g3, this walks into the classic family fork. I have knight to c3 forking the king, the rook, and the queen at the same time here. White cannot take the knight because then you would lose your king. So the family fork simply wins a bunch of material, and I win the game. So therefore, my opponent goes king to a1, avoiding the family fork. And now I play a4. We got knight to c1, takes, and now I play the move king d7. Now black is a little bit better in this position, primarily because I have a better pawn structure. I have 4 pawns connected in the center, whereas white has these 2 pawn islands, specifically f3 and h5. So central pawn mass combined with a great pony in the center of the board means I have chances to win. So we get c4. I play knight to b6, rook c1, d5, takes, and now we get the move knight to c3. Here I play the move pawn to a3, we get b3, and now I play the move rook hg8. Now this move is a terrible move, showing a complete lack of understanding here, but this also is very similar to the game I played against Gukesh from the standpoint that when you're building a big advantage on the clock, you really have to know the time to think and when not to think, and this is a moment where I try to emulate another very strong player, Jan Nepomniachtchi, by moving instantly and playing a bad move. Now what I should have played here is I should have used my time, traded the ponies, and then played the move rook to a5, because now I'm attacking the pawn on h5, and after rook h1 and rook to f5, this rook targets everything on the f file, the pawn on h5, and now I'm free to bring the other rook into the game in the next couple of turns, and I should win with no issues whatsoever. But I don't use my time. Instead, I try to continue pushing on the clock, even though my opponent has 37 seconds, and this move is simply a bad move. We get the trade, king to b1, and now the problem with this position is that you'll notice all of my pawns are on the wrong color. Very specifically, this pawn is fixed on the same color as this bishop. Bishop can very easily target it. You can't go forward because there's a pawn in the way. And I also have another pawn on a3, which this bishop can also win or eat quite routinely. So the problem with this position is that now I have two pawns that are on the same color. White has one pawn on d4, but nonetheless it's much easier to guard this pawn. So because of these two pawn weaknesses here, it's not so trivial to win the game. So I play rook e8, bad move. Of course here I should spend some time. I'm up 40 seconds and play something like bishop g5, but I just can't help myself. I go rook e8, we get takes, rook g1, and now I play the move rook e8, and here my opponent correctly plays the move rook e1. Now you probably think, well, just trade the towers, win the pawn, right? Well, even though I'm up a pawn here after bishop d2, bishop g7, and now the move king c2, let's just say I go like c5 for example, white can go bishop c1, and in this position black is actually completely lost because all the white juicers here are on the opposite color of this bishop. My bishop can't touch anything in this position. Bishop can't touch the pawn here, or the queenside pawns, and eventually what white does is white has the outside juicer here to push up the board combined with the weak pawn on h6. This is actually a technically winning endgame for white. I'm not going to go through the whole long line, but basically due to this pawn and the fact that my bishop can't touch anything, I will lose the game. So I go rook g8, we get rook g1, and now I play the move rook to b8 because obviously a draw is not good enough. We get bishop e3, I play rook e8, and now we get to move bishop takes h6. I take the pawn on d4, we get rook d1, c5, I guard the bishop, and here my opponent plays bishop c1. I go rook to e2, creating the classic kebab. Unfortunately, in this case, even though I have a kebab rook on e2, there's nothing to impale here. There's no meat on f2, g2, h2, d2, c2, b2, or a2. More importantly, the bishop covers a square. So this tower is doing absolutely nothing. So we get the move rook to h1. Now, this is a great move from my young opponent, showing fundamentally strong understanding. Put the rook behind the passed pawn, push that p up the board, and with the rook behind it, it's a very, very useful technique to know. So after rook to h1, I'm already in a bad mood. I have managed to get my opponent down to 13 seconds, but as you can tell, I have no advantage. My opponent has an obvious plan, and here it's really a matter of, is there any way to create a trick? So I play the move king to e6. We get h6, I play c4, and now my opponent blunders away everything with this move pawn to h7. Now I did see this idea with c4 even after rook to h1, but one of the reasons I had to use time and figure out what the right square for my king was is that if I go c4 right away after takes and the move rook to d1, it's spaghetti-o time. The bishop is pinned here, I lose the bishop and I lose the game. So I go king e6, we get h6, I go c4, and now we get this move h7. Had my opponent seen the mate threat and traded the pawns first, this still would have been fine. Bishop to a3 is maybe still losing after c3 with c2, but if white goes rook to h4, king d5, and h7 here, if black tries to push the pawn forward, then white can sack the rook, rook takes bishop, and after takes, white promotes the pawn and wins the game. So after king d5 and h7, black has to go bishop h8, and now after bishop takes a3, c3, and something like rook h6 here, white is supposed to be able to draw the game. Instead here, we get this move pawn to h7, and after pawn to c3, it is the spaghetti-o moment here. I'm threatening to push the pawn. Say you move the rook, I go c2, king has no squares available, both b2 and a1 are covered, rook guards the pawn, king dies, and that's GG on the spot. So what else can white do? Well, white can also play a spite check like rook to h6, but after a move like pawn to f6 here in this position, black is simply going to win. You can also move your king to d7 as well, and c2 is still devastating. Now, the last line that white could try to play to keep the game going is bishop takes pawn, But after c2, king c1, black has to move bishop to e3, checking the king, rook guards the pawn, you move the king, and then I under promote the pawn to a rook, and it's simply checkmate as the bishop guards the rook checks the king has no squares available, it's simply game over. So in this position, my opponent decides to play h8 instead, just basically throwing in the towel. He lets me play c2, and this of course is checkmate on the board. The rook guards the pawn, king has no squares available, and the game ends immediately. Now it's really nice to get to play a checkmate on the board, and this is where I'm going to do a very short segue before we end this recap. And this is one thing that I think needs to be understood by people in the world of chess, which is that playing games out till checkmate is very good for the casual fan to see. It's one of the few ways, in my opinion, that I think that people who are, say, 500, 600, 1000, all levels, will understand what's happening in the game. They'll see it played out till the end. This is something you cannot implement in professional chess, and that is one of the reasons I think when we look at chess and the future of chess, we need to have more pure entertainment terms where you play till checkmate, you play till you flag, all these things become a part, versus me shaking out my hand 5 moves before checkmate and then half the audience not having a clue what even happened. So I got the win with this very sexy pawn checkmate here against Nodar Lortikapanidze from Georgia. This was one of the 2 big wins in the tournament. Obviously, I win my 105th title Tuesday. It's great to win. It's great to play against Gukesh and all these other top players. And that's going to do it for our recap today. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the early title Tuesday, today, July 22nd of the great year 2025. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with more great recaps and content in the coming days. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. See you soon. Bye.